Rule number one, don't open the door.
I need a little more up top and a little less down below.
Amber alert. Oh God, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. In orbit of Uranus,
It smells.
I don't even want to talk about it.
Oh, no, you love me. You know you love me.
Just don't let it touch the
You know, that's great, but give me a little more.
Why? Why are you shooting at me?
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, and welcome out there in podcast and YouTube land. In case you're confused, you have reached Johnny Has the Keys. This is a podcast and a YouTube channel where two guys get together. We talk about movies, horror, and science fiction genres specifically, key influences on the topic of the day, and then things that topic influenced in reference to that. We've been doing it for a while, and we're excited about this one. This particular one is our fourth, what we're calling Reduxes, which is a way of us saying we originally started a few years ago, and we didn't even have a YouTube channel at that time, nor did we have a lot of technical expertise. So we made it up as we went. And now we're going back to those and saying, hey, let's redo those, hence the Redux, and add our new flavor to it, the way we've evolved and changed and done. And before we get started, though, before I introduce Tim, that's Tim, by the way, before I introduce him or anything else, I also want to do a shout out. So we just got 2 new patrons, and we want to thank them. We want to thank Joel Ziegenmeyer and Ellen Reese, both of you guys. Welcome to the family of Johnny Has the Keys. We're glad to have you with us. We'll see you at the reunion. It's going to be awesome. But no, we're really glad that you're supporting the show, and we encourage everybody else out there listening, if you might want to have a spare $1 or $2 and you want to become a patron, we would deeply appreciate it. It helps keep us going. My name is David, after that lengthy intro, and this is my co-conspirator in crime, my friend, my bud, Tim. How are you, Tim? What have you been up to? You excited about today? It's kind of
I'm very excited about today.
I knew you would be.
This is one of my favorite movies. And we've decided with Reduxes, since they tend to run a little bit long, we're not going to do genre week topics. So I guess we'll just dive right in. I mentioned to you before recording that I went back, and this was an early episode. This was like in the first 5, I think. I can't remember. 5 years ago. And all I had were some handwritten notes, and it was just very no structure like we have now, basically.
Right. Mine was the same. I mean, I had it in my notepad like normal, but in my notes app, but it had no structure to it. Everything was just rambling and no real guidance. So now I'm curious to get into it now with what we've learned and how we do this. So
right. Well, before we go, I guess I better let people know, if they don't already, that we are talking about George Romero's seminal film, Night of the Living Dead. This, to me, I've mentioned in many other shows, is probably one of the most influential horror movies I can think of. I mean, there are others. Psycho is another. I think it's very interesting that Psycho, a big budget movie, was in 1960 and pretty much invented the slasher genre. And this movie was in 1969, the very end of the 60s, low budget, and it influenced the zombie genre. So, I mean, you've got 2 major bookends in the 60s. And we've been talking a lot about the 60s because we've been doing top 5 episodes on the first and latter half of the 60s.
Well, and interesting too that both were low budget. Psycho was low budget for Hitchcock.
For Hitchcock, it was. It still had stars and stuff, though.
Right. But I mean, I hadn't heard really. I mean, I had heard vaguely of Tony Perkins prior to it, but Psycho really is what made him a star, I think, more so than anything else. And I would agree with you. I think this movie still has huge influence on the genre. 50 years later or whatever.
And it's not, and we'll talk about it when we get to Keys, but it's not just zombie movies. It's any apocalyptic movie, pretty much. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, structure, character, and I think when we get to it, as we deep dive, we'll talk about some of the other firsts that it did or things that it created and everything else, which were amazing. And it's a legacy film for us because it's where we got our title from. Or the whole podcast.
That's our biggest key right there. Is this podcast is named from this film.
Yeah.
But as far as a synopsis, for those of you out there that haven't seen this movie, we will spoil it, as David often says. However, if you haven't
where
seen
have you
this
been
movie,
if you haven't seen this movie? What?
Yeah, if you haven't seen this movie, you better not admit it. Because you shouldn't really be watching a classic horror and sci-fi YouTube channel and not have seen this movie. But I can understand why you might not like it, because it does have some faults as far as being low budget and bad acting and stuff. But anyway, you should have seen it. And it starts very, I was going to say, this is a very iconic movie as well as influential. And to me, the whole opening sequence is iconic, with the long drive of the car up the road with Johnny and Barbara going to the cemetery, and the credits roll as you see the car in a long distance come and finally get closer.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they're going to the cemetery to put flowers on their mother's grave, or is it their father?
It's their father.
It's their father's grave, yes. Mm-hmm. And Johnny starts teasing Barbara, who's obviously easily scared, that someone's coming to get her, and there's a strange man walking around in the cemetery, and it turns out he is coming to get her because he is a zombie. Mm-hmm. Johnny gets killed in a struggle. Barbara runs. Well, first she gets in the car, but the car runs off the road. She has to make her way to a farmhouse and barricade herself in. She discovers a dead body there. So there's all kinds of questions as to what's going on. And then she meets our hero of the film, Ben, who drives up and tells her what's going on, and they barricade themselves in the house. Lo and behold, a little bit into their barricading in the house, they discover there's another group of people in the basement of the house. Yep. And that's where my whole love of the movie starts, which is, what is worse, the monsters outside or the monsters inside? Which we have talked about that motif and how it is a common motif in zombie movies. And then basically, I won't get into many details, but everyone gets picked off in various ways until there's just Ben and Barbara really left. And Barbara winds up meeting her demise very poetically by her brother, who is one of the zombies outside the house. And then as Ben survives the night, the next day, hunters mistake him for a zombie and shoot him in the head. No one lives. Very unhappy ending, and very, like I said, iconic. I can't think of another movie that had done that at the time anyway. So memories or first impressions?
First time I ever saw this movie was at a drive-in.
Wow.
I saw this movie on a double feature with Texas Chainsaw. And I had seen Chainsaw before, but I had not seen Night of the Living Dead. It's probably why I'm twisted the way I am today. I saw both of those movies at the same time, back to back. So,
well, and they're both of those are iconic for different reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, but also very bleak, showing the depravity of humanity. Which is what I think
the hero from Texas doesn't die, but she's clearly insane.
She is insane by the end of it. Yeah, and the bad guy lives in that.
For sure.
And so there's not that I'm trying to compare them at all. I just think the visceral response to each of those movies really affected me. And really affected a lot of people. I think that's why they were the underground hits that they were, and so popular, and have lasted for so long in multiple iterations and keys that we'll get
sequels and spinoffs and everything. Yeah.
Right. Did you see it in a theater? When was the first time you saw it? Because you've probably seen it 100 times.
I've seen it 100 times and probably 100 versions. But the first, I don't know if you remember this, I had never seen it. I think I had seen Dawn of the Dead because I saw it at a midnight movie. But it was before. Maybe I did see this. I can't remember. But this came out on videotape when videos became popular in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And this is famously known for not having a copyright due to an error from the makers of the film. And back in the 80s, all you could see were ugly, grainy versions of this movie. So my first impression was seeing it back then was like, not only is it not that great, but it's hard to watch because it looks so bad. Now, since then, they have taken the original print. Elite did it first in the 90s, and they made a crystal clear, pristine print that just is mind-boggling when you watch it. So I love watching it more now because it looks so pretty. Back then, it just did not look pretty when I watched it for the first time. So,
yeah, I don't think it was very preserved very well until they did that. And I'm sure it wasn't distributed as strongly as it could have been. I had originally thought that I remembered Romero shot it in 16, but he actually did shoot it in 35, but it was 35 millimeter black and white. But it was... I remember the earlier prints, even the VHS ones, like you said, were like you were looking at it through wax paper. It was just, they were such bad prints and copies. This particular time, I actually watched a 4K restoration of it, and it's still so effective. His direction is really, really good in this movie. And just his use of Scotch angles to create the paranoia and the weirdness and the otherworldliness of it, and the intensity of a lot of the stuff. His jump cuts work really well, I think, for this. Barbara's going up the stairs and all of a sudden looks and it jump cuts to that intense close-up of a rotting face with an eye staring right at the camera, and she screams. So those things, I think, worked really well.
I'm glad you have some of the information on the production because I don't, other than where George came from. I didn't know anything about the cameras or the film type.
Well, I mean, he has said, and this is an early key, but he has said that even in the development and the writing and everything else, that I Am Legend was a huge influence on him creating this. That novel came out in 54, 53,
51 maybe.
Oh, okay. But he has said that was a huge influence. But yeah, in order to get the budget for it and everything they did, instead of shooting in color, they knew they could save by shooting in black and white. That's really the only reason why it's in black and white and not in color, because his later films, of course, are in color. But I had always, because I remember when we were doing Evil Dead, we were talking about 16 millimeter blow up to 35, which is what Tobe Hooper did for Chainsaw. It was 16 millimeter. He shot it and he blew it up to 35 for release.
And that's usually a cost-effective way of doing it, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of your budget is spent in the post-production rather than the actual filming. So you're not losing as much money up front. So that's why Sam shot Evil Dead that way. It was 16 millimeter upscale to 35. But Romero, when I looked it up, it said, no, he shot it in 35. And they've described that as it really worked with his style of guerrilla filmmaking as well. So I thought that was an interesting, ode to his direction style.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because he has style clearly when he made this movie, but he didn't come from a horror movie background. His production company, the Latent Image, was actually filming Mr. Rogers. They got on the map, though, for doing a commercial for Calgon, which was a takeoff on one of your favorite films, Fantastic Voyage.
Yep.
Do you remember that commercial? I do.
I do. Yeah.
From when I was a kid, because you see little people floating around on a bar of soap or whatever. I remember that. But yeah, I just think it's funny because he's a Pittsburgh-based filmmaker, or was actually making commercials and things, and worked on Mr. Rogers, who was also Pittsburgh-based at the time for PBS. Yep. And they raised the money to make this movie. They raised almost $1 million. Well, no, what it was it was a lot less, but in today's equivalent, it would have been $1 million.
Yeah, the initial budget was $6,000.
Right. It's very
Yeah.
it's very low.
Yeah. Yeah. It ended up being approximately 114 was the final, which in today's dollars would be almost a million,
Right.
959,000.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. And I think his ability to, it wasn't just his direction. I think it was the writing and his mythology that makes this movie so iconic and so long lived.
Well, and
in
it's
my opinion.
divided because he had a co-writer that had other ideas, and they compromised and made a good film based on the compromise of others as well, including Marilyn Eastman and Carl. Oh, I forgot what his name, Carl something. They were all putting money in, putting time in, acting in it. It was just a big collaborative effort. Mm-hmm. And then I think I agree with you more on the Romero vision, which he steered off and started with Dawn of the Dead and further embellished, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, but in researching it, there was a thing where Judith O'Dea was saying that a lot of the scenes were improvised. She doesn't even remember ever having a completed script.
Right.
They would just do their dialogue there and everything else. And Dwayne was the same way. And that it shows for him much better than her, but just because Dwayne Jones is a much better actor. He's probably the best actor in this.
He is.
But because of that, I mean, it's hard then to go back and get your screenwriting credit and everything when half the dialogue is written by the cast on set. So you end up with some copyright weirdness too, which is why it was another contributing factor to this. But I do think Romero, going back, I think Romero's mythology, all the themes he puts in this are what, and like you said, he expands that in Dawn and Day, but all of those social taboos and stuff and commercialism and primal fears of being eaten and everything else. I mean, I think we talked about it in the original. I don't remember before this zombies being cannibal.
They weren't.
They were like servants of the.
They were usually set in countries like Haiti or wherever you would have like sugar plantations, and they were normally played by black people as some type of like supernatural slave labor, for lack of better words. That's the cliched voodoo zombie. Romero, you can give sole credit to completely turning that on its head and reinventing the zombie and popularizing the zombie mythos that we know now today with shows like The Walking Dead.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. Yeah.
The reason I mentioned that I thought Romero steered off and created the mythos that we know well now is because Russo did too. But his went into the movie Return of the Living Dead, where it was a little more comedic. They were eating brains, that type of storyline.
Which was originally Russo's pitch with Romero. He wanted a horror comedy, and Romero was much more into, no, we could make this something really scary.
Yeah, and I appreciate Return of the Living Dead. I think it's a great movie.
I do too. I even like the sequel.
Yeah.
So, yes. These are much better. Although you'll probably hate me, but I've still not seen, I guess, Romero's last one, the fourth one.
No, there are actually 6.
What?
And you do not need to see the last one.
I've only seen 3, 1 through 3. So,
he did Land of the Dead, which was after Day of the Dead. He did Land of the Dead, which was a big budget misstep. It had Dennis Hopper and a large cast.
Okay.
I was not a fan. Then he did one that I kind of like that other people don't like, where he went back to the roots of the beginning and did it as a found footage film. But Romero is very cinematic, and he got critiqued for that because found footage movies don't look that good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's probably why I like it. And then he went on to do a final movie called Survival of the Dead, which is one of the strangest movies I've ever seen. You should watch it just because it is so strange. It's about this family on this island, and they're Scottish, or I think they're a different a different nationality. But anyway, it's a very strange movie and not good. Not good at all. So, but right. I guess we keep segueing into keys early because that's how influential this film is.
Well, it is. It is so. Yeah. It has changed. It changed the genre completely.
And that was your original point. Yeah.
Yeah. Scenes? You want to do scenes? We normally just talk about scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do scenes, all of them.
Yeah, for you.
Well, I mean, the whole graveyard scene at the opening, like I said, it's just iconic. And that zombie, Bill Heinzman, is one of my favorite zombies. Out of all the films, he is still one of my favorite zombies.
See, I take umbrage. I have issue with that because as I've said before, I think he acts unlike any other of the zombies. He's different than all the rest of them.
Well, he does pick up a rock and smash a window.
Well, he's also fast and he's also strong. In every other instance, you see them knocking over zombies. It's like they have very little strength to them, even in Dawn and Day. It takes a horde of them to actually hold you down and eat you, unless you're surprised by them and they just bite you. But this guy fights off so much so that he kills the brother, and I can't remember his name. What's the brother's name?
Johnny.
Johnny.
Johnny has the keys.
Yeah. Never mind. Let's just edit that out. Anyway, he kills Johnny, but then he doesn't eat Johnny. He goes after her. Why? He's got fresh warm.
No, you're right. In latter movies, he would have just stopped there and ate Johnny instead of chasing Barbara. That is a definite step out of the ordinary.
Because they're singularly focused. He's fast. He's strong. He uses weapons. He figures out that he can't get in the car, so he picks up a rock to break into it. Later on, he's just, I don't know why he's different. I mean, he's not really gory at all. Like
no. And that's what I think. If I had to apply logic to it, it would be that he is a very fresh zombie, and that is why he's still more mobile.
Yeah, and possibly, I always construe too, he came from the cemetery. He dug his way out. He was actually just like freshly buried.
I don't know that he would. Well, I don't think any of the buried ones get out, but I do think that he could have been in a coffin at the cemetery that had not been put in the ground yet.
Yeah, something like that.
Like under a tent somewhere, and they're waiting for people to arrive, that kind of thing. He does look like a fresh corpse. That's what I like about him the most. First of all, he is scary. He is fast, and he's got a really great look. His face looks like a dead person's.
Yeah.
As far as if I had to give Romero the benefit of the doubt or whatever, it's that they really hadn't defined the concept yet. Romero wanted him to break the window because he knew it would be scary. What they didn't know was that car windows are harder to break than regular glass, and it took him 3 times. And they couldn't retake it, so that's why. And also the other zombies later in the film use it to break. They seem to not like light, so they break the headlights of the car, which is also more logical thinking than we know zombies to have. They're more bestial for lack of another word, animal-like.
Well, and I agree with you on scene because I do love the whole opening. First of all,
beautiful.
He uses that library music, but it's very specific and works really strongly. It's bombastic. It makes you unnerved. It's creepier, but also orchestrally creepy, if that makes sense. But he does this really static, almost like commercial, because he's used to doing that style, but everything locked down, very nice shots of the whole car coming up, and then their shots in the car going to the gravesite, him complaining. But once we see the other zombie, everything goes to this real handheld feel. And so to me, it's the juxtaposition of the two. Everything seems everything seems really balanced and nice and normal, so to speak, until the attack. And then everything gets really angly and weird. And we're suddenly a very close up of Barbara as he screams, looking past the the grave.
And you get that close up of the zombie too when he kills Johnny and looks up and the lightning flashes. I mean, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I love how they do that. Back to what you said, we're going to talk scenes, and that's one of the scenes. But what do you think of you were talking about the music being bombastic, and all this is public domain music because I didn't have a budget for an orchestra. So what did you think about the music of the car driving up in the credit sequence? Because that to me sounds like War of the Worlds. It sounds like 50s sci-fi.
That's what I mean. It's unnerving. Because, and I think it was a good decision because you go, that's weird music to be shooting this long shot of a car coming up the road.
So real warbly tones. It sounds like 50 sci-fi to me. But then, like you said, the juxtaposition in the camera work, once the zombie attack happens, you get a juxtaposition in the music that's equally as jarring because it is that bombastic music that's more akin to horror than the opening music.
But again, 50s horror, that pom 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 dun, 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 dun,
they had what they had.
Right. But I still think from when we used to make films and we would find classic songs to put underneath it that were public domain and stuff like that, it's hard to find the right thing that works with your editing and your timing and what you want, without having it very beat out and orchestrated and done like that. So it's very
rare to get the exact thing you want. It's like having a puzzle that's missing a piece and you're trying to fit a piece in that doesn't quite fit. Yeah.
And overall, I think he did really good audio-wise in this film, with the exception of the cricket. That is the most annoying frickin' cricket in the world.
Is that when she's in the house?
Yes.
Okay.
When she's looking around in the house, and later on when
I think he's trying to establish that night has come, which happens very abruptly.
We got that with 3 cricket chirps. We don't need 5 minutes of it. And it was the loudest cricket in the world.
And you want to talk logic. She's bitching at Johnny for sleeping late, or they wouldn't be late to putting the flowers on the grave. But yet she gets to the farmhouse, tries the phone, turns around, and it's dark outside. It's like, it's only been like 30 minutes.
Night has come. Boom. We're here.
Okay. We have to have night fast because it's in the title.
Scenes. I love Ben. I love Ben's scene where he's telling the whole story, and all she's doing is holding like the tablecloth or whatever, and he's breaking down the table and telling his whole story. Just the way it sets his character up so strongly for how he rationalizes stuff and how he examines a situation, and he uses that for the rest of the movie. And I think that was a brilliant idea to just let him do his monologue there.
Yeah. And if I lived in that world, I would be just like him as far as not stopping boarding things. He is constantly doing something while he talks to make that house more secure. And I'm like, that's my guy right there, because that's what I would be doing.
I do not have any time to talk to you about this. I'll talk to you as I'm
I think you should just calm down.
You should just calm down.
Because Barbara is a wreck. As meticulous and organized in thinking as Ben is, Barbara is just a train wreck. I mean, she is out of it. She is traumatically distressed because she watched the murder of her brother.
Yeah. Johnny's always been in charge. That's why they're late. He's the one that's driving. It's probably his car.
Well, it's the late 60s. It was still a male-dominated world. So that's why a lot of the men are the ones that have more lines in this movie, too.
True. But you do get the impression that she's broken from the very first scene.
And to Romero's credit, it's great that one of those men is a black man and not just white men talking. So,
yes. Agreed.
We got away from scenes, though.
My next scene would be, of course, the cannibal feast. That became it was so assaultive when I first saw it, but now has become such a trope especially of Romero films, but also of the genre itself. You got to show them eating at one point.
I have so many favorite scenes. I don't know where to start. I know. I like all of the television stuff. when they're like showing a newscaster talking about the dead doing whatever. It gradually progresses to, oh, they're mass murderers. Now they're dead mass murderers. And finally, oh, they're also eating people.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. That is, and he does it gradually just through news clippings.
Yeah, all of their exposition dumps through television work for me. I love all those scenes. All those scenes are great. And he carries that into Dawn very, very well, I think. It's a good linkage between the two.
It is. You started to say the murder, I think, of the mother in the basement.
Yeah.
I like any of that stuff and anything in the basement, especially when she's eating the dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of people like, and this is another departure from what you were saying, is she uses a weapon against her mother. She uses a garden trowel, and that's not typical zombie behavior.
Yep. I agree.
They were finding their roots.
You actually said it for me, and it obviously is a huge key for Sam for Evil Dead and everything too, but Barbara's death, when the horde finally gets through the door, and the one that actually does the breaking through and everything is Johnny. And we know it's Johnny because of the glove, the driving glove.
Right.
And everything. And
because he's not got his glasses anymore. His glasses got knocked off. Yeah.
Right. And but he's the one that takes her and pulls her out of frame and everything else. I mean, kills her essentially. And I thought that was, like you said, poetically ironic and sad, because there's no final girl in this.
It's a literary device, which is probably why I like it, but it unifies the movie because the movie started with him and it ends with him and Barbara. They start off going to the cemetery together. Then at the very end of the movie, he ends up killing his sister. Well, I love that.
Again, screenwriting wise, that concept of we start with this girl, but then much like Psycho, about halfway through, we lose interest in her. It's really other people become the protagonist, but she still is there. It's not like we got rid of her like in Psycho. She's still there. She's just not the focus anymore. But Ben becomes essentially the protagonist of the piece.
And we shouldn't get away from him. He has some great scenes too. I particularly like the scene where he and Tom and Judy go out in the truck to try to get gas. The truck blows up. They get killed. Zombies eat them. Ben comes back to the house to get in, and Harry Cooper will not let him in.
Not let him in.
And he breaks down that door just in time to see Cooper going into the basement, man. And he's had enough. He beats the crap out of him. And I mean, you don't blame him. And later on, something similar happens again, and he shoots him. So Ben basically murders Harry Cooper too.
Hey, well deserved.
It is well deserved. Harry Cooper is clearly the most villainous of this troupe of actors or troupe of characters,
including the zombies.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Ben has that great line. I've got it in my watch notes of, "You be the boss down there. I'm the boss up here," or what.
Right.
Love.
Yeah. And anything that's up here stays up here because I'm fighting to protect this, not you. Right.
Yeah, but that's a good one. That was a real. All of Ben's are. I mean, seriously, even down to the end of it, and that's another one of my scenes. Not only the irony of the ending of we survive the night, dawn comes, we think it's okay, and Ben looks out and they shoot him in the freaking head.
It's so abrupt and so startling.
Yeah. And his credit sequence after the montage.
I was going to say that's montage. My favorite too. I love the credit sequence.
Love it. With the meat hooks, bodies,
fire, pile of bodies.
Yep.
I don't know if you noticed. I happened to notice this time. I probably noticed it before, but I had forgotten. Ben's body is lying next to the original cemetery zombie.
I did not notice that. That's awesome.
You can see both their faces really close together. Yeah. That's another unifying thing too. You have the very first zombie at the beginning of the movie and then Ben being next to him at the end. There's a lot of, I don't know. I mean, I know Romero liked to write. I think he wrote a novelization of this book, or maybe Dawn of the Dead, or both. I can't remember. But he's using literary devices in this film, and that's why I think another reason I gravitate to it.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So we basically just said the whole movie.
Yeah, basically.
And
yeah,
I like that Ben. I like when they cut to Ben being through with the windows downstairs, and he's used everything. There's like an ironing board across a door. There's like boards and doors across doors, interior doors on exterior doors. Mm-hmm. We neglected to mention, but I think most of you know this, if you know the plot, that the Coopers are in the basement because their daughter got bit. So this is another classic motif that happens over and over again in zombie films and television, where someone inside is injured and you know they're going to turn. You're just waiting for it to happen. And I see it in Ben's head. Like when they mentioned that she got bit, he doesn't say anything, but you see that he knows what might happen. And it's very fortunate that when he does have to barricade himself in the basement at the end, when the zombies break in the house, that he does have those extra bullets, because the mother and the father are both down there and they turn, of course, because they were killed by the daughter. Actually, Harry was killed by Ben. He got shot. But yeah, they're both in the basement. All right. So I guess
that's the other thing too, I guess, is a created trope from this, because prior to this, zombies were singular. The witch doctor had to spray you with the dust or reanimate your corpse or do the ritual or whatever. And it was just one. In other words, when that zombie did the bidding of the witch doctor and went and killed somebody, they didn't become a zombie. It wasn't viral.
It wasn't viral. You're right. They didn't bite anybody. They just strangled them or whatever. Yes.
Yeah. So this whole creation of you're not even safe if you kill the person, because then they're just going to come back. And he did it the best, I think, in Dawn, with the guy, like the sharpshooter, young whippersnapper, blonde guy.
It's not Peter, but I can't think of the other guy's name.
Yeah,
there's Flyboy,
you know who I mean.
Peter, Fran, and something else.
And shooter blonde guy.
Roger, look out!
Yeah. Look out!
But man,
but his being bitten and then the slow turn and then having to kill him, and that was well done in Dawn. But we're jumping ahead anyway. Night. They don't do that.
Well, I think we've given enough background exposition. We've talked about enough scenes, because, like I said, this thing is chock full of iconic scenes. I have very little casting. It was, I guess, the most landmark thing with casting is that there are two things this movie did that had never been done. One is that it's one of the first films to graphically depict violent murders on screen, but it's also one of the first films to have a black person as a main character. Now, I would disagree with that. I think there were not enough black actors clearly in lead roles back then, but Sidney Poitier was making movies before this. I think this is the first low-budget horror movie with a black lead character. Because we talked about
my note
recently.
My note has it as Dwayne Jones was the first time a black actor was cast in a leading role that was not race specific.
Okay, so, well, that makes sense.
Poitier had done movies prior to this, but it was all of them were. It was very important to the character that he was black.
You're absolutely right. I see what you're saying now.
This one was race neutral. And it was played that way. They never threw the race card anywhere in it. Rednecks in the woods and everything.
Right. And that's a good part, or a good segue to casting as well, because this movie was not written with a black actor in mind. He just happened to be the best actor, and George Romero cast him and didn't change the script at all. Which kudos to him, because I've mentioned this before, a lot of people think Romero had political ideas he was using in the subtext of this movie. And I think there are political ideas or racial in particular in the subtext of this movie, but I think they were unintentional. And I think that's why the movie is really strong. I think they just happened organically.
Yeah, I think his thematic was capitalism. His thematic was all about how that form of thing will lead to destruction. And
right. Well, and I think that he didn't intend it, but it happened. Then he started doing it intentionally with Dawn, with the commercialism and the gimme, gimme, gimme culture. Then he just started, because like I said, I think he's got a writer's mind. He tries to put those things in there. And I think it just probably happened accidentally with the casting of Dwayne Jones. He, as you said, is the best actor in this movie. He oversaw the literature department at Antioch College in the 70s after this movie, and was an executive director of Black Theater Alliance, a federation of theater companies. So he has a theater background. I think Judith O'Dea did too, but it was more amateur theater.
Correct. That's true. And Johnny, the guy that played Johnny, also, both of them came from local community theater. They weren't professional actors.
And I don't know this because he died young, and I don't know this, but being a gay man, I question it. Was he gay? Because I don't see any mention of any female partners in his life story at all. And I was like, and he's theater. So
he's in theater. He's in theater.
It happens.
It happens.
So I was curious about that. I mean,
that was one of my questions.
It's hard enough to be a black man, but to be a black gay man at the time would have been even harder. So
that was one of my questions to you was I never saw him do anything else. So he must have gone to theater as opposed to film, which is great. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. I have right here, executive director of the Black Theater Alliance, a federation of theater companies from 1976 through 1981. And he continued working as a theater actor and director until his death in 1988. And I think he was like 50. He wasn't that old. But most of the cast members of this movie are dead, except for the women, which is ironic because they always say women live longer. Judith O'Dea is still alive. Apparently, he originally wanted to cast Betty Aberlin of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as Barbara, but Fred would not allow him to use her in the film.
Mr. Rogers contributed to the casting of Night of the Living Dead.
He did, because he said, you can't have this actor. This is a kid's show, and I don't want her in a horror movie. And I guess he was worried they'd be associated.
And he's probably right.
And man, bless her heart, Judith O'Dea gave us the line, Johnny has the keys. She also gave us a lot of other really funny, unintentionally funny lines in this movie, but she's not that strong. She's a little all over the board.
Yeah. And devil's advocate, trying to play hysteria realistically over and over and over for film is trying and difficult. And if you're a theater actor, you're probably not used to that much. You tend to overplay it, which she does. She either totally underplays it so much that we don't know what she means, or she overplays it.
That's a very good point. She is a theater actor, and she doesn't know how to tone it down for film. But Dwayne did. So it speaks to his level of talent that he knew to do that. Yeah. I do really love when she slaps him and he hauls off and socks her in the face. Hey, because she's catatonic, and she's like, we have to go get Johnny. Johnny's out there. And he's like, your brother is dead. No, he's not dead. She slaps him and he goes, pop. And it's like, well, now she's unconscious. I can get some stuff done.
Yep.
And when she wakes up, she has a bruise. I don't know if you noticed, she has a bruise on her cheek.
Those big nails. That's all I asked her to do was get the big nails. And she can't even do that. So, yeah. But, yes, casting. Sorry.
Well, I mean, none of these people went on to do major things because they were not actors. Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman, I believe they were married at the time. Yeah, in real life. Played Harry and Helen Cooper. Their daughter, they're both dead. And I'm wondering if Marilyn Eastman had something to do with getting the film, Eastman Kodak. Kira Shawn is alive. She played their daughter, the one that was bitten and comes back and kills her parents. Keith Wayne played Tom. I can barely find anything on this guy, only that he died young. He, like Dwayne Jones, did not have a really long life. Judith Ridley, who played Judy, is alive. She has one of the worst line deliveries in the movie outside of Barbara when she goes, "I'm going to go with them."
Yeah.
It's like, really, girl?
Yeah.
You're going to stand there like you're getting ready to go in the basement and then last minute run outside while they're trying to fight off zombies? I think not. But anyway.
Yeah, no.
And that's basically the cast, other than the outside characters on the news and the hunters in the woods. George Cassana oh no, I take that back. Well, George Cassana played Sheriff McClellan. I'll go ahead and say that. I forgot to mention the original zombie, who I like so much, was played by Bill Heinzman. There is a little anecdote I have of him. Gary Striner, the brother of actor Russell Striner, who played Johnny.
Yeah.
Bill Heinzman saved him from severe burns when his arm caught on fire during an effects mishap, and he began running in terror. Heinzman, in full zombie makeup, tackled him to the ground and extinguished the flames.
I did not know that. Interesting.
So he, at least he may have been an iconic zombie, but he had some common sense too. The other guy certainly didn't. Frank Doak played the scientist, I guess, on the news. Another famous face was Bill Cardille, who played the guy interviewing the sheriff. He was the local host of Chiller Theater, which is like a Friday night fright shock theater type show where they showed horror movies. And his daughter, Lori, was the star of Day of the Dead in 1985. So George Romero, in turn, cast his daughter as the lead in that movie. And then I neglected to mention, I briefly mentioned, though, Russell Striner is also still alive, and he played Johnny. So there is one male still alive in this cast. So the two people connected to our podcast really are still alive. Woohoo! Your baby is still alive. That's what I have on cast. As far as awards, lots of wins, but they're all posthumous, mainly because of the restoration process this film has gone through. It is on the 1001 list of movies you must see before you die list. Very well warranted. I am so happy that happened. But even more importantly, in 1999, the film was deemed culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress and selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. So that, to me, is the best thing that this movie got as far as an award. You don't see it with low-budget movies that often.
No, but it deserves it. I mean, it is so revolutionary. I even have in my notes here, the film ushered in the splatter movie subgenre. So,
I mean, there is definitely gore. It's just in black and white. I don't know. I mean, Psycho had black and white blood. This has black and white guts. So, yeah, I could see that.
But like Psycho, a pseudo key, they used chocolate syrup for the blood in this as well.
They used real organs.
Yeah, they did. He went to a slaughterhouse and got that for the munching scene.
Yeah, there's one scene where a woman is clearly eating a liver.
Yeah.
And there are no fava beans.
No. Yeah.
Before we move on to keys, do you have trivia? Because I have probably a good bit, and I also have a good bit of watch notes if you want to go through some of that stuff.
Yeah. As far as trivia, I have, I gave you one, which was they used the Bosco syrup, chocolate syrup, as blood. I also have that the movie actually released on Halloween. I thought that was cool trivia. On Halloween in '69.
Yeah, I believe it was a matinee. Or if not, there was a matinee of it fairly early on that's controversial. I don't know if you know about that.
No, what?
Well, actually, my note says it premiered on October 1st, but it was close to Halloween at the Fulton Theater. And maybe it was a larger premiere that you're talking about. This was like
maybe
the soft opening, I guess, at the Fulton Theater in Pittsburgh. It was a Saturday afternoon matinee, typical for horror movies at the time, preteens, children. The film rating system was not in place. And so kids were able to purchase tickets. And Roger Ebert, we know Roger Ebert is one of the critics from the Sun-Times, chided theater owners and parents who allowed children access to a film where they were entirely unprepared.
Well, yep, that would make sense. Yep.
I've got to know. Ebert noted that the children in the audience initially displayed typical reactions to 60s horror films, including shouting when the ghouls appeared on screen. He said that atmosphere in the theater shifted to grim silence as protagonists each began to fail and die, and be consumed either by fire or the undead. The deaths of Ben, Barbara, and the supporting cast showed audiences an uncomfortable, nihilistic outlook that was unusual for the genre at that time.
Yeah, I would think that was probably true. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I've got another note about this same showing. It said the kids in the audience were stunned. They were almost completely silent. The movie had stopped being delightfully scary about halfway through and became unexpectedly terrifying. There was one little girl across the aisle from me, whoever wrote this, maybe 9 years old, who was sitting very still in her seat crying. It's hard to remember what sort of effect this movie might have had on you when you were 6 or 7, but try to remember at that age, kids take the events on screen seriously and they identify fiercely with the hero. When the hero is killed, that's not an unhappy ending, but a tragic one. Nobody got out alive. It's over. That's all. Yep. That might have been Ebert. Maybe he was at the screening of it. I just found that very interesting. And funny.
That ties into trivia that I have, which is I can't think of another movie where no major characters survive. Every single character in it dies.
No.
I mean, I'm sure there are,
but that kid lived in the road.
The kid lives at the end of that.
Yeah.
You know, every single major character in this. So even Tommy and Jan, they die at the gas explosion, but you've got everybody dies in this movie. I mean, I'm sure there are other ones. I just can't think of them right now. But this was the first one profoundly affected me that way. That there's no freaking hope. Damn, why did he board everything up? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, can you imagine seeing it if you were 6?
Yeah.
I mean, my sister was showing me werewolf movies or like old Universal ones at that age, but nothing like this.
Yeah, but nothing like this. That little girl is in therapy even today, I would imagine. So,
I did find some production stuff in my trivia. I'm not going to read all this because it's a lot, but it basically this is Russo talking, that he and George were both writers. Remember I mentioned it had like a writer's mind to it.
Yep.
And he said they would stay up all night and walk the streets just hashing out ideas. They bought a 35 millimeter camera and decided they wanted to make a movie. So they all kicked in about $600 a piece, raised $6,000 and figured that was enough to start a decent horror film. And then that's when, I'm not going to get into it, but like they talked about it maybe being a UFO landing and then blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden the dead's coming to life. And then all of a sudden they eat people. They threw everything together and that's what came about. That's why some of our zombies don't have definitive rules in this movie, so to speak.
Well, yeah. And when they first started principal photography, they only had half a script. They weren't even halfway done with the script when they started shooting. So there was that too. And that's why it evolved as the movie went on. I have in trivia, this was the first movie fully shot in Pittsburgh. Television had been done there for a while, but they had never really shot a movie completely in Pittsburgh. So it was the first of that. And that by the end of it, he used about 200 extras. So I guess that's for all of the hunters, the zombies, all of that.
And some of the actors doubled as zombies. Marilyn Eastman clearly eats a lizard off of a tree.
Yes, and they did use a local slaughterhouse to get certain offal for them to use at times. Yeah, nasty. But that leads to a big key of mine later on, so we'll get to that.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I had any other trivia. Oh, you were talking about the script not being finished. I have a note where George was having problems with the script, and he said, I know what's wrong. It needs another siege. And that's what he meant when he did the scene with the zombies get into the house at the end. So that brought that climatic moment that they needed, because there wasn't enough conflict with just Ben and shooting Carl, or is his name Carl?
Harry.
Sorry, I'm trying to use his real name, but it's Harry Cooper.
Well, interesting, because that becomes a trope that many other movies have used, but even Romero has used. There's always that last act attack where the zombies really burst through at the end. Like you said, siege. There's a final siege.
It's like ants, man, or insects. They are just bursting in through that one little door and get inside. Yeah.
That's a good one.
I mentioned the premiere controversy. I think and the fact that John Russo did develop ideas for sequels as they parted ways and did want to lighten it and make it funnier. And he did that, of course, with Return of the Living Dead. They were friends, though. They were never enemies. They've always been. I mean, I don't think George had any enemies. He was a really likable person. Everything I've ever heard about him was that he was very, what's the word? Gregarious.
Affable.
Yeah, affable, gregarious. Yeah. Exactly. So he wished him well, and he did his own little zombie movie. I have watch notes. I'm not going to read them all, but I might have something funny. Do you?
Let's see. I've gone, this beginning is creepy.
I've got no, Johnny, don't turn off the radio.
Not now, right now? No.
Yeah, you would have heard what was going on.
Yeah. I've got, where is it?
I get so caught up in this movie that every time I see the graveyard fight with him and Bill Heinzman, I pull for Johnny, even though I know he's going to die.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got Romero seems to be making up zombie rules as he goes. I've got love the moodiness once they get to the farmhouse. Great lighting, great shots.
That was my next thing. I was going to say, even though it's cheap filmmaking, the lighting is phenomenal when she gets to the farmhouse with all the shadows. It's so creepy.
And again, I think that's why he chose that contrast. When you look at the whole beginning, it's really low contrast, black and white. Everything is very washed out in the cemetery, all of that. But once we get to the farmhouse, there's so many shadows and oblique lighting where he'll either put lighting right above them so it shines down, or to the side, so we get all this half in, half out. Plus that with the tilted angles and everything makes it just really unnerving and cool. Really good choice.
There's a cameo early on. Did you know that?
By
John Russo.
Oh, who's he?
He is the zombie that gets in the house while Ben is out fighting other zombies. He's the one that won't quit moving his eyes, even though Ben killed him.
Oh, he's creeping up on Barbara?
He's creeping up on Barbara. Ben comes in, kills him with a crowbar, like to the skull. Yeah. And even though he's there with like a hole in his head, his eyes are still moving, because I think he's just not a very good actor.
He's a writer, not an actor.
That's John Russo. So
I've got, there's a naked butt. So that was probably in the approach shot. And then I've got, nobody in this movie finishes a freaking cigarette, which is common. That's a big trope in movies, but I've got it in my watch notes.
I used to get really frustrated with Barbara's hysteria, but I've got a note that it's creepy and effective how she keeps repeating the events leading up to the cemetery. When she goes, I was with Johnny and we were going to put flowers on my father's grave.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, ooh, girl.
She's stuck in that. That's the last time she was happy.
Well, it's very symbolic, too, when she picks up that music box, because she's stuck in her own little music box.
Yep.
she slaps him, he punches her.
I've got, oh, that's a mistake. The long shot of the car and then the barn is in daylight, which is true.
Was it shot night for day or something?
Yeah, when they're getting ready to go to the barn because that's where the gas pump is and everything else, it looks, like afternoon. And then they cut back inside and it's night.
That
obviously.
was common in all kinds of low budget horror movies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You had to have the insert, but it's not the right time. But hey,
I love Tom's line. Don't shoot. We're from town. I'm like,
we're from town.
So what?
Yeah.
I don't know you. That doesn't mean anything. I love that Helen Cooper already is over Harry without even saying
a word. Yeah.
I mean, you could look at her body language and tell my husband is a dumbass.
It's a response to your Johnny line or whatever, your line I've got. So no one else here is from town? They're the only ones that are from town.
Right.
And then I've got in my watch notes, so the entire town, obviously, though, is coming to this farmhouse. Right. Everyone in town is coming.
And if you're from town, Tom, why didn't you know the owner?
Yeah. Whose house is this, Tom?
Yeah. They shot on location in D.C., so they drove to D.C. and shot those scenes with Romero, another cameo, playing the reporter, interviewing the military guy in the limousine or whatever that car is that they're driving. So I was like, wow, that's the Capitol in the background. That's a little bit of budget.
I've got the screams echoing as Helen dies are really cool. That's a great choice.
It is. It's very, very creepy with the blood splattering on her face. I've got that when they decide to finally leave and go get gas, that scene is like 3 minutes. They basically throw Molotov cocktails, get in the truck. She says, I'm going to go with them. And then they get in the truck, they drive to the pump, it catches on fire, blows up, and then Ben's back at the house. And it's all really, really fast. I mean, that was like a fast scene to kill off two characters. But I mean, it's effective. It's not a bad thing. I just thought it was interesting that it did not transpire long at all.
I've got in my watch notes, it's an interesting choice, a great choice by Romero that the morning transition is a quick cut because it calms us down. We think now is the end and happiness and this will be good and Ben survived and
all the noise from them stomping around upstairs is gone. Yeah.
Yeah. The audio is quiet. It's daylight. We're good. We feel great about it. And so he can do that final twist of him getting shot. That was a great choice.
I love the look that Ben gives Cooper when he gets back in from that little expedition to the gas pump. He gives Harry Cooper that look, I'm going to kill you because you were about to kill me. And then you get into Kung Fu theater where you hear all those fake.
Oh yeah. The fist fight doesn't work.
The fist fight.
No, it does not work.
I love it though. It reminds me of me and Steve Rowe.
True.
You have the line, you can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Yeah.
And then lights out. Love when the lights go out and you have that tone of the music. And then Ben shoots his ass.
I'll always think of Tim and Steve Rowe. Beat them or burn them. They go up pretty easy. And they're all dead. They're dead. They're all messed up. So you. That is so you.
It's very improvised. You could tell that it's not in the script.
Oh yeah. I don't know what to say here. Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
I've got to love Helen and Karen in the basement. That's the murder. Oh, and then I love when Johnny comes in the door at the end. I always think of Here's Johnny with Jack Nicholson in The Shining or Johnny Carson. And then I was like, there's a lot of zombies in that house, man. There's a scene where the whole room is full.
Yeah. There's 500 zombies in there. Yep.
And then we've already talked about it, but I just love the abruptness of the closing credits.
I do too. Yeah. And that crime scene photography stills works so good.
Grainy.
Yeah. Yep.
But that was my watch notes. I don't usually do watch notes. I'll let you do that, but I had a few I wanted to throw in there.
I'm glad you did. I love it. Again, that may be a perk we put on Patreon or something, because I look back at my watch notes and go, oh my gosh, this is great, because I just type it out as I'm watching it. I mean, literally as I'm watching it. So it's reactions.
Funny.
Which are sometimes great.
All right. Well, one of the reasons we chose this film for a Redux is not only because it needed to get some justice after not being a video in the first season, but it's also because I've constantly beat over the head the fact that this is an influential movie. So that brings us to keys.
It does.
Where do we start?
Well, I have at the beginning, one of mine is Hateful Eight, because Hateful Eight starts the same way. And Tarantino said that the reason he started it the same way is because of this movie. It's a extremely, extremely winter long shot of the stagecoach as it slowly approaches the stage, the coach spot, the
I've
hotel.
never seen that. That's great.
And it's just this long, meandering shot forever and forever. And then it cuts to interiors of them talking. So it's,
wow.
But he has said that his inspiration was the beginning of Night of the Living Dead for that. So I thought that was interesting.
It's funny that you chose a non-horror movie, because the first thing that came to mind after reading about this film is the Christopher Guest movies, where they don't use scripts and basically improvise dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
They used to have an outline, like Best in Show is one, Mighty Wind is one.
Yep.
Waiting for Guffman is one. But they're given an outline and then basically let them say what they say.
Well, I have other movies where protagonist dies. We had said earlier that this is the first movie I can think of where every main character dies. Mm-hmm. But since then, and even before then in literature, there have been lots of movies where the main character dies, like Great Gatsby, Titanic, both the lead dies. He dies. Mm-hmm. Braveheart, Gladiator, Thelma and Louise, all those where you have a lead that you like and everything else, and they end up dying. So,
but not any that everyone dies.
Not any that I can think of where everybody dies.
Because I'm not sure. I mean, would that be a key? Would Titanic wouldn't be a key then, really? Would it?
Not really, just because that was just my generalization of where a protagonist dies.
You mentioned the book I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, which was
mm-hmm.
a huge influence on Romero for this film. One of my favorite books of all time. I mm-hmm. have to mention that The Last Man on Earth came out before Night of the Living Dead. It came out in like 1964, I think. So I'm quite sure that Romero was probably influenced by that film, or he may have even said so. And mm-hmm. it was also shot in black and white. So you basically got one person surviving in an empty world in black and white, which is what's going on in this film as well.
Romero has said he was influenced by Carnival of Souls.
Yeah.
In his approach to this, which is, you can see, and that works for me.
It is a Herc Harvey movie, low budget. It's on our list. We'll probably cover it soon because I've almost picked it several times. And it's just an unusual movie. You don't know whether or not the protagonist is alive or dead. So it's kind of like Sunset Boulevard, only they let you in on the secret in the beginning of the film.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that. I've got in my keynotes on the side over here, Sunset Boulevard and Sixth Sense.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just because it was, letting you in on the gag. But I have Alien.
Really?
Not only, for two reasons. One, the whole Ripley casting thing. Ripley was originally written as a man by Dan O'Bannon, and they ended up casting Sigourney in it because she just read it so well and did so well. We've heard that the Ben character was never intended to be black. It was just he was the best actor for that role. So that casting coup of finding the right person for the right role, regardless of where you originally thought it would be, I have in that. And also the whole using offal thing. That's what they used for the big chest bursting scene. You went to a slaughterhouse.
And got real
a
guts.
bunch of real guts to use for that. So
you mentioned, well, I think we both mentioned early on about how white men in particular, were still king of the hill or whatever in the 60s.
Yeah.
What you just said about Sigourney Weaver playing Ripley, I saw Jodie Foster on a talk show the other day, and she said, "Oh yeah, I usually get scripts that are written for men, and then I say I'll do them if they'll cast me as the male part." So
there you go.
Yeah, that's so it's still going on.
Yep. We had talked, I mentioned earlier, Psycho. We had said Psycho, not only because of the chocolate blood, but also because of the switching in protagonists. We start with one protagonist and then we switch to another one. And that's now become pretty common, I think, in a lot of things, where especially in these long form miniseries or series of 6 episodes or 8 episodes on television, Netflix shows and all that, you end up getting one protagonist and then switch to another. That just happened to me with Silo. So
obviously we've already talked about The Walking Dead. I mean, that comic book was clearly, this movie clearly influenced Robert Kirkman, to do the comic, which eventually led to the series, which has now led to like 7 series that they have. It's crazy. It's like they're the horror equivalent of Star Trek all of a sudden. And all because of this movie. Return of the Living Dead, we've mentioned, was the Russo counterpart with comedy. And then I put Mr. Rogers in there because, if he hadn't been working for someone at least of that caliber, Latent Image wouldn't have had as much clout to get a commercial like that Calgon commercial where they spoof Fantastic Journey and then eventually go on to make their own first low-budget film. Yeah. So Mr. Rogers may be all nice in his neighborhood, but helped this movie come about.
Yeah, this is not his neighborhood. No.
I would like to see the zombie Mr. Rogers neighborhood.
Oh my God. See, that should be on one. What's SNL? The claymation? No, the claymation one that Seth Green does. That would be it, Mr. Rogers.
Gumby and Hokey or what? Pokey.
Yeah. Yeah. You had mentioned the whole zombie glut, not only Walking Dead, but 28 Days Later. Last of Us is like the latest version of that. It became the game, then became the series. All their variations of a viral zombie. What was the one we did second season?
Girl with all the gifts.
Yeah.
It was the first season. We did the Girl with all the gifts. That was a good one too.
Get that. Could you try again?
Well, I also have.
Are you alone?
Yeah, I am now.
That was weird.
Siri was talking to me. I also have all of the essentially survival horror, whether it's like Resident Evil, that spawned the game, spawned the movie, spawned the remakes, all of that.
Yeah, and that's something we didn't even mention, but games. How many zombie games are there out there? There's no telling how many there are. I don't play them, but I see them, and I know people play them.
Well, and even when they do a non-horror game like Call of Duty or whatever, and then they do the zombie version of Call of the mod that you can get. So there's that.
And there's a Marvel universe where the superheroes are zombies, Marvel zombies too.
Yep.
That's actually Robert Kirkman too. I lost my place. Hang on. Oh, I have Batman because you keep mentioning those Scotch angles. And the other thing at the same time, actually Batman may have been a little bit earlier than Night of the Living Dead. So that means that Romero probably saw what they were doing with that cinematography and thought, "Ooh, that's cool."
Yeah. Yeah.
With turning things
and
on
I've got side. Well, that's a good segue to mine because I've got, of course, Evil Dead. Evil Dead and specifically starts with the car driving and then the menace appears. A cabin in the woods, of course, or a farmhouse where they're all there. The menace is outside and they have to protect themselves, but then it starts coming from inside. All the Scotch angles, that photography, the moody lighting, going from close up to not, and the ending where the sun comes up and we think everything is safe, and then we have the final twist. So Evil Dead, of course, I'm sure Sam was severely influenced by this movie.
the zombie I like so much that you have questions about, Bill Heinzman, based his characteristic saunter and that of other zombies on a film with Boris Karloff, the title of which he could not remember, but was most likely The Walking Dead, which I actually recorded the other day. I'm going to watch that. In the film, Karloff played a man risen from the dead and walks with a characteristic ungainly saunter. And I really like the way he walks, especially like when he's chasing Barbara down that road in that picture behind me. And he's just all over the place because he can't really walk very well.
Yep. That works for me.
There have been...
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there have been countless releases of this movie because we didn't go into it in very big details, but they had quarrels over the title. At one time it was going to be Night of the Flesh Eaters, at one time it was going to be Night of the Anubis, and then it eventually became Night of the Living Dead. But when they changed it to Night of the Living Dead, they neglected to move the copyright to that title, and it immediately went into public domain. Hence the horrible grainy versions of it that I was seeing in the 80s, because everyone in the world wanted to release it and make money off of it. And now they're doing the exact same thing on streaming platforms. This movie is playing on almost every streaming platform that you can get.
Really?
Yes.
Well,
it's very easy to find. Now, most of them are better copies of it than what we had to deal with the videotapes in the 80s. But, it's on every channel. And there's some that are colorized. And there's actually a version that I think it was Russo and Heinzman got together and did in at the new millennium, like around 2000 something, they filmed new scenes and added scenes to the original with Bill Heinzman playing the cemetery zombie again. So he looked clearly different.
But
even with makeup, he looked older. So it's just
by 40 years or 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's like this weird introverted cannibalistic key because it keeps feeding off of each other, with all the different versions and different. We know that Tom Savini made a remake of it in the late 80s, I believe it was. I liked it. I don't think you liked it that much.
It was okay, but not. I much prefer the original. So yeah.
And there are other remakes that are out there that are just terrible. One of them has Sid Haig in it. Actually, I'm not sure if that may be the one that Tom did. But anyway, there's a Night of the Living Dead 3D out there that's I've never seen because it just gets horrible ratings. So
reboots, remakes, all of it. It keeps reanimating.
Well, because it never had a copyright, basically, and that's why. So that plays big into keys as well. Did you have other keys?
No, I think I'm near the end of mine. Let me double check because we said, I had two more. One is the social commentary of it, and it reminded me of like Get Out, Stepford Wives. Some of the ones that we've covered recently are within the past 2 years that are the same way. The underlying theme is a whole commentary on current society.
Right. Get Out is a great example. What was the other one?
Stepford Wives.
Stepford Wives.
The whole speaking of male patriarchy.
Right. Exactly. Women were, oppressed somewhat in that, I guess you would say, both metaphorically and within the actual script. I have two more very important keys.
Yeah.
One would be my first novel, The Dead Next Door. It's the only novel I've written in a horror genre because I've been writing under another genre here lately. But the whole time we were talking about it, this movie in particular, like today, I started thinking, oh my God, I did that in my story and didn't even realize it. Mm-hmm. Like they tell the progression of events via news and radio and television. Did mine through Facebook because they see stuff on, the character in my book sees stuff on television, but once television's gone, he's using Facebook because he still has battery. Mm-hmm. So anyway, The Dead Next Door, my book is basically an origin zombie story as well. And I even mention things like Night of the Living Dead in it. So,
and you also don't have a definitive reason for it, which is another thing we skated over in this, but that's another trope of this, which works, is we just covered the road. Same thing. There's no reason given for what caused this, but now we're living through the aftermath with these characters. And that's very similar to a lot of the better dystopian stories. So we don't need to know what caused it. We just need to see people survive, or try to.
For sure. Yeah, it's a motif. It's definitely one of the stronger motifs. And then lastly, my final key is us. Our podcast is basically born out of this idea. You and I are both big fans of genre. I'm a horror fan. You're a sci-fi fan. I was trying to think of a movie that combines both, and this one does mention space probes, and it does have sci-fi 50s music in it. But I wanted to I think I threw it out to you one day. I just said, Johnny Has the Keys. And you thought, well, that's a good title. Yeah. And I was like, well, how can we play off of that? So I thought, let's turn it into a metaphor. Maybe the keys are elements of films that we like and why they distinguish them from other films, whether it be for good or for bad. And that's where Johnny Has the Keys came from. So any of you folks out there, you may be getting a little lesson about how this all came about.
Yeah. And if you are new to us, click that subscribe and like and do all those things that you have to do down there on YouTube, and or follow us on podcast of your choice, whatever platform you're listening to us on. And also give us a review, give us some stars. Tell us what you think. Do you agree with us? Do you like it? How many times have you seen Night of the Living Dead?
And do you like the idea of us doing reduxes from the first and second season, which was audio only? I have to say that I'm loving the crap out of this. I'm liking diving back into these movies, and I think we're going to do 4 more next season.
Yeah, it's interesting to go back and either look at the notes from our original and or listen to the original episode, and then say, look how we've changed and evolved and grown since then, which is great and enjoyable to me. So I agree with you. And we also, again, a big shout out to Joel Ziegenmeyer. Joel, thank you so much for joining us on Patreon, and also Ellen Reese. Both of you guys are part of the clan now. So you're in our zombie family, so to speak.
Yes.
And we're glad to have you.
Or the Federation, or whatever tier.
Whatever tier you would like to be. There are several tiers there, and we do encourage you guys, if you're out there listening and you like us and like Johnny, there's some special content on the Patreon that you can only get with the upper tiers, and we would appreciate it if you joined us and learned that.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because I have been reorganizing Patreon, and we now have, if you click under collections, you will see we have the Star Trek collection, the Dilithium Chamber. You'll see that we have an X-Files collection. I'm going to do a behind-the-scenes collection, a personal collection, as well as a Marvel collection. So
excellent. Yeah. All of our, and you need those collectibles. You do. You may not realize it, but you do.
I just was shocked at how many episodes we have over on Patreon. There's a lot.
Which is great and awesome. But you can follow us on your platform of choice, and also on YouTube, of course. And we thank you guys for doing it. Let us know what you think, and we'll be back at you next week with another little piece of genre goodness. And I think is it horror again?
No, it's actually sci-fi, and we only have 3 to go. We are almost finished with this season. We have 3 more movies, 2 sci-fis, and 1 horror. So
again, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. Tim, thank you for doing it with me.
Hey, I enjoy it. See you next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has